Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Papers or a child's answer? What truly holds a home? Today, James trades boardrooms for boiling soup. Grandma makes a quiet decision, and one small enamel bowl becomes a promise as Nye speaks her answer out loud. Will the vows made at this dinner table survive tomorrow's real work? Stay with us from the first 5 seconds. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. A market in late afternoon light, a steady list in his head: greens, meat, rice. James weighs each choice with the same patience he uses on people. He says Nye is still at school, so he'll cook first and circle back before the bell rings. The talk at the stall drifts toward home. Just farming, potatoes, corn, rice. His voice sounds like soil turned with a shovel. Back in the sling bag, a bag of potatoes keeps the damp smell of earth. Corn silk clings like hair after a swim. Rice whispers against the plastic like a soft rain. One pot needs 15 minutes, another needs 10. He counts by eye and habit. What meets first today, the rice timer or the schoolyard bell? If the timing misses by a breath, what part of home loosens? On the counter, a small enamel bowl dries upside down, a white ring faint along its rim. It is the one that always waits for Nye. It is little, but it holds a promise larger than its size. Plant it here and see where it travels. He rinses his hands. There are no titles in a kitchen, only a simple order: wash, slice, season. The house listens to the knife like a steady heartbeat. Someone asks about manual work. James nods. Yes, manual work, that's it. Not defeat, a rhythm that does not break things. He lays rice by the stove and looks toward the doorway. The dirt path to school stretches like string tying 2 rooms together. At one end, Nye and a backpack, heavy not with books, but with an entire day. At the other, a stove where sautéed shallots will speak welcome louder than any speech. He memorizes the list: cook now, pick up later, keep everything warm. Keep rhythm first, then dream bigger. People once asked him about companies, about chairs. Today he answers with soup. If dignity can live inside boiling water, what else can stay safe inside something so ordinary? Dinner does not arrive first, trust does. You two love Nye so much. Let us stay here with you. Then I can be at ease. Grandma places the sentence like someone setting a fragile cup on a table. Too much work, she says. Hard to care for her well. James thanks her without bowing the room. We'll treat Nye like our own child. Diep's hands keep the kitchen rhythm, but the knife meets the board a little softer, as if she doesn't want trust to crack. No papers shuffle, only eyes that hold still. The small enamel bowl gleams under the window, right side up now, as if it heard its name. The doorway keeps a pair of tiny sandals pointed inward. Please be at ease, returns again, not a slogan. A path laid smooth so a child does not stumble on it. A breeze threads the eaves, leaves murmur. Inside, the tempo shifts from temporary to staying. No grand promise arrives, only the daily actions that promise on their own. Pickup, cooking, bedtime, schoolwork. If ease has a shape, is it the way a spoon ends up in the same place every night? Small footsteps skim the yard, laughter comes before the handle turns. Nye is home. The door opens and the house brightens by 2 shades. James washes at the sink, asks if the board is clean, then steps beside Diep. 2 knives, 1 rhythm. Midway, the real question. Do you want to live with Grandma or stay here with Ms. Diep? The girl doesn't hesitate. I want to stay here with Ms. Diep and Uncle James and still play with Grandma. The sentence threads the adult closer without tugging. The rice eases its rolling boil like it understands tonight needs gentleness. The backpack slides onto a chair. A quick story from the gate. A teacher's wave, retold. Heads nod. James smiles and adds, nothing. At the moment of choosing, silence is respect. I can carry the weight if the rhythm holds. Diep stirs, and a cloud of fried shallots rises and falls like a lullaby. No contract seals anything. A child's clear line does. The small enamel bowl moves from the window to the table, set at Nye's right hand, reframed. Not just a bowl now, a seat reserved for belonging. When Nye drags her chair closer, the legs make a small sound, a marker placed. From now on, this chair will learn spoon clatter and homework stories. James glances at the doorway again. The path to school is still there. Today, he will walk it lighter. Close on Nye's hand, sliding the chair, wood-size air settles, breath evens. A small palm warms the cool rim of the bowl. A spoon touches enamel, one clear note. The room agrees. Please eat. Spoons and bowls ring lightly. Nye receives a small piece of meat. Don't throw the fat, comes a gentle warning. She nods, grinning. The circle of invitation moves around like a familiar rite. Grandma invites, Diep invites, James invites. The food is modest. Care makes it glow. Steam lifts from the soup. The meat plate sits exactly within Nye's reach. The small enamel bowl anchors the right side of her place. Mid-meal, words arrive in the right order. We treat Nye as our own and will raise her to be kind and useful. Grandma nods, eyes resting a beat, like a stone dislodged from the riverbed and settling again in clearer water. Chopstick sounds shift from random taps to a shared tempo. What does safety sound like if not these quiet clinks and breaths between bites? Nye eats calmly. Every "is it good?" meets a soft yes. Reassurance needs no volume. Only rice that doesn't run out too fast and soup that stays warm. The small enamel bowl is no longer background. It is bright with broth, edges fogging and clearing with each breath. One dinner sketches the coming years, hurried breakfasts, late lunches, complete evenings. Grandma mentions visiting, buying a gas stove. The future answers without rushing. Enough. Fitting. James lifts another piece into Nye's bowl. Diep slides a napkin closer. The phone buzzes. Delivery confirms the gas stove at 7 a.m. and adds 6-month trial rental if the paper is signed tonight. James looks at Diep. 2 seconds of quiet. Then a slow nod. If we promise at this table, can tomorrow carry it without breaking? The bowl's rim shows a tiny chip where the glaze thinned long ago. Half reveal. It is not perfect. It holds anyway. So will they. The path from the market to this chair is short on a map and huge in a life. Trust sits between Nye's rice and Grandma's nod, between the word please and the heat rising from the pot. After dishes, James wipes the table dry and looks at the list again. Cook, pick up, keep warm, and adds one more line he doesn't say out loud. Keep the promise moving. If we sign for 6 months, what does home owe back? Tomorrow begin with real work. Night settles in layers, the stove cools, the table dries, and Grandma lingers near the doorway as if a draft could carry doubt back into the room. She scans the corners one more time. The towel hung to dry, the backpack in reach, the small enamel bowl now washed and waiting on the rack, gleaming like a quiet moon. I'll come by tomorrow with a gas stove, she says, almost to herself. Then to Nee, be good, listen to your aunt, do your homework. Nee's chin tips up. I will. Come eat with us, Grandma. A soft tug at an older heart. Diep walks her to the step. Not many words. The air between women who have carried the same child in different ways. We'll take good care of her, Diep says. Her voice is steady. Her hand, not so much. I know, Grandma answers, and for a breath, her eyes shine in the porch light. Something unclenches. She nods once and leaves the rhythm behind. The yard answers with crickets. James watches the silhouette move along the path, small and exact, until the hedge hides it. He locks the gate and turns back to a house that suddenly feels like it has a spine. He lowers his voice by habit, as if not to wake a sleeping trust. Nye sorts her school papers on the floor. 2 neat stacks, one saved drawing with strong black legs on a little horse. She looks up. Can we hang this near the table? Tomorrow, James smiles, with tape that won't peel the paint. Bath water hums in the next room. Diep tests the temperature on the back of her wrist and calls Nye. The child slips in, shoulders disappearing under a thin wave. The bathroom fills with the smell of soap and the tumble of small words that spill after safety arrives. Nye retells the teacher's joke 3 different ways, trying to see which version lands truer. Diep listens like it all matters. It does. She pours one more cup over small hair and smooths it flat. If I keep the small things soft, the big things won't bruise. They blow dry Nay's hair by the window, where air moves slow. James pads in with cotton pajamas, pretends the sleeve has gone missing, finds it behind Nye's ear, earns a tired giggle. He checks the alarm on his phone. 5:30, enough time to start broth and sweep the front step before the morning rush. We'll do drop-off together, he says. Then I'll go handle the forms. Diep nods. I'll come after the first chore cycle. The night edges towards stillness. Nye slides under a light blanket. One story, she bargains. A short one, Diep answers. She picks a true detail from the day and folds it into a story that can hold a child. Potatoes with tiny eyes that learned to see the kitchen. A spoon that found its way home. A path that didn't get lost in the dark. Nay's breath evens. Her hand loosens. The blanket remembers its work. James stands at the doorway, not entering, not leaving, the way you stand at a chapel. When they step back into the kitchen, something breaks. Not a sound. A hush. The kind that comes when your whole life makes a small click into place. They lean on the counter. The light throws a gentle square onto the floor. Diep looks at it. I was afraid of this part, she says. The regular part, not the big problems, the everyday. James breathes out through his nose. We can do every day. Short? Sure. He reaches for the enamel bowl. His thumb finds the tiny chip on the rim. He rubs it once with his nail. The rough edge is honest. He sets the bowl down carefully. It rings against the rack. A note, clear and small. What will we give up, Diep asks, to keep that ring from going hollow? Her eyes stay on the rack. James thinks for a beat. Speed, he says. We give up speed. We keep rhythm. He speaks like he did at the market, counting minutes without a watch, measuring heat without a gauge. And we don't let the list get louder than Nye's voice. They talk with the fridge, hum, as percussion. The plan is plain. Early broth, school, drop-off, paperwork for the new work plan, a phone call to a cousin about spare shelves, a borrowed broom, return at noon, sweep again, learn the timing of light on the front step where customers will stand. They place each task between sips of tea, not to conquer it, just to see it clearly. The future shows its face without raising it. The clock moves, the house thins. When the last cup is rinsed, Diep holds the towel and meets James's eyes. "I don't want to be brave," she says, and the sentence stumbles before it stands. "I just want to be decent, every day." James's answer is the easy kind. "That's harder, we'll do it." Courage is loud, decency is daily. Choose daily. They switch off lights and let the hallway lead them to sleep. The last glow is the one over the drying rack, a small square of gentleness over a gleam of porcelain. In the dark, the bowl is still there, catching what little moon spills in. Morning comes in through thin curtains. The kettle trembles before it sings. Knives lift and lower like breath. James keeps to the list. Broth on, rice rinsed, front step swept with a rhythm a drummer would respect. Diep ties her hair, wipes the table, folds a napkin into a square. Nigh sleep smiles her way to wakefulness and arrives at the table with socks mismatched. James points at the socks and raises an eyebrow. A tiny rebellion they both ignore. They walk the path together. Air crisp, gravel giving a clean answer to each step. At the gate, Nissi looks back once, not to ask for permission, to check that the thread holds. Diep kneels to eye level. "We'll be here at 3, she says. Nye nods. "Don't be late," she declares, playing adult, and runs in with the swing of a small queen who knows her court. On the return, the world looks the same and not the same. The house waits. The phone rests on the table with numbers ready. The day's work stands politely by the door, asking, "Will you keep yesterday's promise when nobody's watching?" James lifts the enamel bowl from the rack and sets it on the table, right where it belongs. He and Diep stand a second longer than needed, as if some ceremony must finish before the day begins. He squeezes her shoulder once, not a cheer, an agreement. What begins here so small, who will feel it most when it holds? They open the door. Light crosses the threshold and lays itself down on the floor they swept. The first call dials, the first hello lands. The bowl waits, ready to be filled again tonight. Home isn't signed on paper. It's cooked, carried, and kept. One quiet bowl at a time. Tonight, a grandmother's trust found a seat, a child chose safety with clear eyes, and 2 adults answered without speeches, by showing up. The path from market to table looked ordinary, yet it held every vow that matters. Pick up, keep warm, listen first, repeat tomorrow. If there's a secret here, it's rhythm over speed, presence over pride, decency over drama. When the light fades and the dishes dry, what stays is simple, a place where a small voice is heard and believed. If this story touched you, tap like and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter. And tell me below, which moment moved you most, the child's choice, the grandmother's nod, or the soft clink of that chipped enamel bowl finding its place again?